2 years ago, I rented a car in Jerusalem to go find a man I'd never met, but it would change my life. I didn't have a phone number to call to say I was coming. I didn't have an exact address, but I knew his name, Abed. I knew that he lived in a town of 15,000, Kfar Kara. And I knew that 21 years before, just outside this holy city, he broke my neck. And so, on an overcast morning in January, I headed north, off in a silver Chevy to find a man and some peace. The road dropped and I exited Jerusalem. I then rounded the very bend where his blue truck, heavy with 4 tons of floor tiles, had borne out with great speed onto the back left corner of the minibus where I sat. I was then 19 years old. I'd grown 5 inches and done some 20,000 push-ups in 8 months. And the night before the crash, I delighted in my new body, playing basketball with friends into the wee hours of a May morning. I palmed the ball in my large right hand, and when that hand reached the rim, I felt invincible. I was off in the bus to get the pizza I'd won in the court. I didn't see Abed coming. From my seat, I was looking up at a stone town on a hilltop, bright in the noontime sun, when from behind there was a great bang, as loud and violent as a bomb. My head snapped back over my red seat, my eardrum blew, my shoes flew off. I flew too, my head bobbing on broken bones, and when I landed, I was a quadriplegic. Over the coming months, I learned to breathe on my own, and to sit, and to stand, and to walk. And I relearned my senses too. I had not been able to smell at all for 2 weeks, owing to a nasal feeding tube, when one day, an aunt of mine brought to my room in the ICU a gardenia blossom she had grown in her backyard in Florida, and she held it to my nose, and I inhaled, and I took in its ambrosial scent, and suddenly, what had been lost was found. But my body remained divided vertically. I was a hemiplegic, and home in New York, I used a wheelchair for 4 years, all through college. College ended, and I returned to Jerusalem for a year. There I rose from my chair for good, I leaned on my cane, and I looked back, finding all, from my fellow passengers in the bus to photographs of the crash. And when I saw this photograph, where do I point this? There we go. I didn't see a bloody and unmoving body. I saw the healthy bulk of a left deltoid, and I mourned that it was lost, mourned all I had not yet done, but was now impossible. It was then I read the testimony that Abed gave the morning after the crash, of driving down the right lane of a highway toward Jerusalem. Reading his words, I welled with anger. It was the first time I'd felt anger toward this man, and it came from magical thinking. On this Xerox piece of paper, the crash had not yet happened. Abed could still turn his wheel left so that I would see him whoosh by out my window, and I would remain whole. Be careful, Abed, look out, slow down. But Abed did not slow, and on that Xerox piece of paper, my neck again broke, and again, I was left without anger. I decided to try and find Abed, and when I finally did, he responded to my Hebrew hello with such nonchalance, it seemed he'd been awaiting my phone call, and maybe he had. I didn't mention to Abed his prior driving record, 27 violations by the age of 25. The last is not shifting his truck into a low gear on that May Day. And I didn't mention my prior record, the quadriplegia, and the catheters, and the insecurity, and the loss. And when Abed went on about how hurt he was in the crash, I didn't say that I knew from the police report that he'd escaped serious injury. I said I wanted to meet. Abed said that I should call back in a few weeks. And when I did, and a recording told me that his number was disconnected, I let Abed and the crash go. Many years passed. I walked with my cane and my ankle brace and a backpack on trips in 6 continents. I pitched, overhand, in a weekly softball game that I started in Central Park. And home in New York, I became a journalist and an author, typing hundreds of thousands of words with one finger. A friend pointed out to me that all of my big stories mirrored my own, each centering on a life that had changed in an instant, owing if not to a crash, then to an inheritance, a swing of the bat, a click of the shutter, and a rest. Each of us had a before and an after. I'd been working through my lot after all. Still, Abed was far from my mind when 2 years ago I returned to Jerusalem to write of the crash. And the book I then wrote, Half-Life, was nearly complete when I recognized that I still wanted to meet Abed. I wish to tell him that what makes most of us who we are most of all is not our minds and not our bodies and not what happens to us, but how we respond to what happens to us. This, wrote the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, is the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. I wish to tell him that not only paralyzers and paralyzees must evolve, must reconcile to reality, but we all must, the aging and the anxious, and the balding, and the bankrupt, and the divorced, and everyone. I wish to tell him that one does not have to say that a bad thing is good, that a crash is from God, and so a crash is good, a broken neck is good. One can say that a bad thing sucks, but that this natural world still has many glories. I wish to tell him that in the end, our mandate is clear. We have to rise above bad fortune. We have to be in the good and enjoy the good. Study and work and adventure and friendship, oh friendship, and community and love. But most of all, I wish to tell him what Herman Melville wrote, that truly to enjoy bodily warmth, some small part of you must be cold, for there is no quality in this world that is not what it is merely by contrast. Yes, contrast. If you are mindful of what you do not have, you may be truly mindful of what you do have.